Aloha, everyone. Wonderful to see you, and also wonderful to have spaciousness for our time together. So I don't have any time constraints today. Hey, we pull up today's sutra. Right. So as you sit and yoga, yoga is based on this understanding that everything is connected, everything belongs to each other, and to access coherency through that feeling, that center is a place of feeling that can only be experienced, but we can use words and cues to explore that place. So I'd like you to just kind of feel behind your ears, and behind your earlobe you'll notice there's a little bony projection, your mastoid process. Maybe you can see it better on this side. And it's a little cone shaped or conch kind of shaped bony protrusion. And that if you were to go into your midline or your mid space, about the area around where your uvula hangs at the back of your soft palate, just slightly anterior to that is the center of your skull. So it's actually a lot deeper than we think. We tend to think of, at least I do, I have to reorient myself. I tend to hold a lot at the base of my neck, but as soon as I feel into my center as being deeper within me, it just totally changes my sense of coherency and my receptivity. So consider that possibility, but more than consider, know that you have this in you and that it's a place for you to develop intimacy. Samana Jaya Shvalanam. When we are aware of the force that transmits well-being, health, nutrition, information, coherence throughout our body, our whole body begins to glow. Today, number 342, Śhrotra, Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, saṁyamāddivyaṁ, saṁyamāddivyaṁ, śhrotram. And it's interesting, if my memory serves me correct, Śhrotra also means the channels through the body. It's the Ayurvedic term. Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, saṁyamāddivyaṁ. Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, saṁyamāddivyaṁ. Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, saṁyamāddivyaṁ. Śhrotram. Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ, sambandha, saṁyamāddivyaṁ. Śhrotram. Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ sambandha saṁyamāddivyaṁ śhrotram. Śhrotrākāśhayoḥ sambandha saṁyamāddivyaṁ śhrotram. Complete concentration on the interrelation between the atmosphere and the ear brings an ability to hear of a most high order. This is something that's been reiterated. So he's hammering a point. Our ability to hear, our ability to listen. So here's a little story about a young seeker who once asked his teacher, "How might I awaken divine, extraordinary perception?" And the teacher replied, "You have to learn how to listen. You have to learn how to hear." So that night, he sent the student to sit by a river with one instruction: do not meditate, do not analyze, and do not seek an experience. Just listen. So at first, the student, he enjoys the sounds of the water, the frogs, the birds, the wind. But soon his mind begins to add a commentary, the narrator. And he's like, starts qualifying things. This is too loud. It's too repetitive. It's not peaceful enough. And he starts to get agitated. And he stands up to leave, but a thorn, a clawing thing, catches his robe. And he stops, and something about the thorn humbled him, reminded him what he was doing. So he sat down and listened again, not to the individual sounds, but to what held them all. And suddenly everything shifted. His whole field opened. He began to hear the silences between sounds, the holy pause, and he felt the vastness, the expansion that can receive every vibration without judgment or commentary. The river was not the main experience, space itself was. And so at dawn, he returns proudly to his teacher. "I listened to the river all night." And the teacher laughed and said, "No, you listened to Akasha, the field in which the river appears. Divine hearing is not hearing more sound. It is hearing with less self." So again, yoga is tantra, where we use the physical realm and human life experience to awaken spiritual understanding, the freedom to understand things, the fullness of life. So tan means to stretch, and tra means to integrate. And tantra is this looming and weaving together in which a single thread of understanding, which we tend to relate to a narrative, is too weak. But when we loom it together, when we see the continuity, that is what is the resilience, the strength. And it's really about our capacity to make meaningful distinctions and be in relationship with reality, not our idea or our narrative of reality, and to use our body for this medium to transform our consciousness. And this realization creates physiological changes. The yogi use their body as the lab, as the medium, and we're able to tap into subtle energies through their senses, through embodiment, through mantra, through feeling where there's these confluences within their systems, the marma points. And because spirituality is so subtle, we have to be able to access things beyond our normal five senses. without direct perception, these teachings, they're going to be accompanied by some doubt. Is this really possible? Is this really something available to me? So having our own direct experience is really what allows spirituality to unfold naturally. It's already happening. We learned that in the Kaivalya-pada. The practices aren't making it happen, but we're working with this this unfolding of our consciousness and being able to discern between what we're grasping for, what are projections of our own mind, and what is truly our own experience, our own awakening. So the difference between your own revelation and your ideas of revelation. So every aspect of ourself is a possibility. It's a portal to explore, and we can choose which doorway to enter. So our senses are the doors of our perception, and learning to work with our senses so that we're not consumed by them. And this prepares us for receiving the subtle transmissions. So this sutra, Patanjali says, samyama, on your ability to hear and your relationship to space. Wow. I mean, it's so obvious. And like none of the, I don't really see much of it in the translations, like space to hear, the space that we hold. And holding space for ourself and the other. The sutra, the conventional classical translations, they speak about how all of this is a result of the pure eye sense. So from that Samkhya chart. When we look at the like evolution of creation, one of the first elements created, or the first one, is akasha. It's space. So before the initial vibration, the word Om Pranava could be uttered, there had to be a space for it. There had to be the etheric. And the sutra says by tuning into that space, we have the power to hear subtle and distant divine sounds. That our ability to listen actually links our senses to the tanmatra, the like primordial subatomic elements. And when we're listening, it either kicks our ego or it brings a sense of autonomy. Like I can listen to their story and still hold space for myself. So it's quite practical, this sutra, that we can, use. We're taught to pay attention to that space behind the ear. Okay, the mastoid process, we could relate it to that, the cone-shaped bony protrusion, and how it helps us to open our field. Like if you clench your jaw, it closes. You don't even feel like you have the back of a head, right? That tension goes all the way to the base of the skull, and it impinges our cranial nerves. So our ability to use these cues to sharpen our auditory capacity to track nuance, rhythm, breath, pulse, emotional tone, and to become a deep listener in conversation. On a subtle level, it's about being able to hear our inner vibration, nada yoga, and where we can go beyond the words, beyond the sounds, for true intimation and communication. So what is not being said? What is the intention? Sometimes people aren't very skilled with their words. Where is a resonant field that's being shared? On a mystical level, this is about being able to commune with the living world through sound, hearing the voice of nature, of our spiritual guides and ancestors, and also our inner guru. So sound as a channel of revelation. So the sutra invites us to, again, explore the yoga of sound, mantra as a living transmission, not merely a technique, and our capacity to receive subtle vibration and sonic truth. So space, open up your backspace, supports the power of your healing. Sound is the nature of space. Space actually has sound. So the word akasha comes from avakasha, which means to create the space in which all things inhabit. It's intangible, it's abstract space between all tangible objects. And to understand that space is a vibrational matrix of vibration. So I don't really understand this, but in the last training, there was a really bright woman. She had like a doctorate in healthcare, et cetera, and cultural, socioeconomic implications, and had studied string theory. And I was sharing about the Samkhya chart, and she was like, "Oh, this is string theory." And I was like, "Can you explain that in 20 seconds or less?" And so that there's these subatomic kind of like vibrations that come into coherence and they layer onto each other, and that's how things are created. I was like, I can understand that. So everything has like these vibratory natures, and when they're in resonance, things build and things are created. So all of our senses, according to that Samkhya chart, evolved from these subatomic tattvas, these elementals. So from scent and earth come together, taste and water, touch and air, sight and fire, and their supports are adara. So by I don't like saying doing, but being in samyama, which is like this deep state of listening, of communing, of curiosity on the element, we develop subtle perception. Pranayama is about feeling space in yourself, right? Where is there space? And then we need to be grounded in order to be able to sniff out a situation, right? We can smell things, what's happening. We need an inner fire, an inner curiosity to be able to see clearly what kind of had evaded us. Our subconscious needs space to feel, which then opens the space for our inner wisdom to be revealed. We need moisture to taste, fluidity, and the power to circulate. So akasha, space, is all pervading. And it is sphere for the action of sound, the power of higher audition. And by understanding the relationship between that thing which supports it and the thing that is supported, it opens our perception. I thought this was really fascinating. So one of the more like classical translators, he says that all is placed, the space and sound and vibration, all is placed in the hollow of the earth. Wow. I love that. I don't really know what it means. Couldn't explain it, but I like how it feels. And that is where our power of hearing is located, in the hollow of the earth. So what this intimates to me is how the earth is a resonator. It's also an echo chamber, isn't it? So when we can, see that, like, as we know this from quantum physics and quantum psychology, that what we're the narrative in our head will play out through our lives. So we can also hear the soundness of something or its defect. So this reminds me, I'm going to pull from some past classes here about our ability to hear and the vibrations that we hear in our ears. And a lot of people are disturbed by this, but actually, according to yoga, this is awakening of subtle power to hear, what most people call tinnitus. That the resting hairs in your cochlea, and it's really, oh my God. So cochlea is like the deep inner ear. It's also Greek for kochili, a shell. Okay. And this is the the symbol for hearing, divine, signed, etc. And it kind of looks like an ear, doesn't it? So the resting hairs, their little cells, they vibrate at about 100 to 300 hertz. And some transmissions say that until you can hear that, you haven't been initiated by yoga into yoga. So we're learning. And by the way, bodies that are tightly held together do not make a lot of sounds. So like when something when your body starts gurgling and things, listen to that. That means like, oh yeah, your body's like getting juicy again. I got to write that down because I hadn't related it. So a body that's open makes sounds. And if you recall, the earth has its oscillatory frequency between about 150 to 500 seconds. And it varies according to atmospheric pressure from the inside and the outside. And it's described as being like a bell-like ringing. It's a very low frequency. And it's possible that it's the sound of wind-driven waves that are resonating on the ocean floor. Pretty interesting. So our ability to really listen, again, helps us to sense, like, is something whole? Is it sound? Does it have cracks in it? Even though somebody could have a really good argument. And our sense of hearing is described as being like iron. So when we have good skills at listening, we can actually draw out through the speaker, like a lodestone, what the truth is, what they're really saying, what they're really asking for. And that absence of obstruction is the quality of ether, of holding space. A typical metaphor is that in these older translations is that without akasha, without space, there isn't even room for the point of a needle. And that spoke to me of this sense of Sūtra, Shloka, Śhrotra, Shastra as that penetrating teaching, right? The point. So how we hold space for that to penetrate our being. So hearing and listening are not always the same. And it's not just about hearing with our physical ear, but our heart, our gut, our mind. Excuse me. So first, we're going to hear our conscious mind. Then we're going to hear our subconscious mind. And then underneath that, when we're listening is the perceiver of our inner spiritual entity, which already came in whole, already knows, can't evolve any further. It's like it's already complete, but is morphological. So we can then, the sutra says, it always gives these like huge possibilities, these lofty possibilities that you can actually hear through great distances and even through time and space. And that's the sense of, again, Akasha, which is the galactic center in which everything is encoded. It's like the chitta of the collective. So all wisdom, whether it was heard and forgotten, it's still in the ethers. Hearing's a pretty subtle process, and much of our bandwidth and time is wasted in listening to those useless thoughts, the narratives. And, it's like when we have that metric of the, 80,000 thoughts and how many of them are repeating, it's like, what is an original thought? Like, where does that come from? And it really begs me to wonder, when we have a new understanding, or we're remapping ourselves proprioceptively in space, a lot of times, like through these tentegrity explorations that we've been doing, a lot of times you'll see people like this, and it's like because they're reorienting, and you ask them what's going on, and they don't have the words for it because it's truly something that they've never experienced before. So our ability to like really feel here, like see, feel, touch, feel here, is where we're opening to something that, again, it's never been seen, never been told before. Much of our pain results from a lack of communication. And when we numb pain, we clam up. We also numb our capacity to feel joy. If someone isn't listening to us, a lot of times we'll end up speaking louder, which doesn't always help. That often will cause that person to withdraw even more, right? So listening is such an art, without our own wheels spinning, without trying to bolster our position, bolster our sense of like our holding pattern, and also not filling in the spaces for another person, to be comfortable with silence, to really reflect, am I focusing on the words, or as Hafiz says, are you weighing every word of your beloved like a dead fish? So being able to read between the lines, to be able to truly listen, is about surrendering your agenda. Okay. I also shared before that they've done studies that pre-surgery, when soft music is played, less anesthesia is needed. So it's like there's a receptivity that happens in the system. Also, singing is a brightening, awakening, stimulating sound. Ah is where we release the mastoid process, really being able to open the cranium. Nada yoga is so effective that it has its own branch of yoga. And this is where you start to pay attention to super physical sounds. And then in Laya yoga is where you're able to hear them at certain points in the body. And they've, done studies that each organ is vibrating at its own frequency. All of creation is vibrating in harmony, and that there's celestial music. It's an ocean, it's a orchestra of consciousness. So the instrument of your hearing is also your power of hearing. And Dr. Rolf would speak about how, when you're helping, for those of us who are teaching somatics, etc., we're not therapists, we're educators. And we're just helping people to perceive themselves differently and to explore that there's many ways of perceiving yourself. So the words that you use are really important. Words have magic in them, and words can be integrative. It can create a perceptual shift. So as we, appreciate yoga as everything's connected. You're not pieces and parts. You're not a machine that needs to be put together or bolted or reconfigured, but that you are living architecture. You work with people in such a way, or you commune with people where you see them as already whole, not pieces and parts. And as individuals, we do not respond to technique, but to relationship. So if the presence that we offer, the quality of touch, feels safe enough, people will naturally experience transformation. And everyone's negotiating their own history, right? What they're holding in their field, adaptations, rejections, hopes. And if we can be quiet enough, the body will reveal its priorities, the places that want to be touched and places that don't want to be disturbed. Leave it alone. So to be able to slow down, listen deeply without trying to fix somebody, without seeing what's wrong, without judgment, actually makes you a better human being. It's the foundations of being a good person. And in a world where there's so much fear, there's so much noise, and there's all kinds of invasions happening. And what's it happening over? These tattvas, these subatomic, elements or resources. That's what a lot of these wars are being fought over. It's important in communities to hold space for each other, for communication. So before you engage or react, to take a breath, to create a safe space where none existed, and to offer unhurried presence really restores dignity. So we have all of these means to remember our coherence. And one of those is to choose curiosity over certainty. We do that every time we soften our breath. And we already know that coherence is contagious. So people who are trusting you with their vulnerabilities, that you can contribute in a meaningful way, that you are a lifelong student of the mystery of what it means to be a human. Less is so much more. You don't have to break down people's walls, show them where they're adhered or where they're stuck. You don't have to poke at their scars, but really to understand the nature of conversation. Mystical communion and conversation is where you're just following along in the direction of release and what feels natural and organic unfolding. And this creates a change in our physiology. It creates a change in our metabolism. It increases coherence and our ability to heal ourselves. It changes our morphological adhesions. So the more that we support that encouraging environment, through open conversation, the more that ability to heal, to restore the wholeness that already is, that yoga is all, yoga starts, yoga, it's all connected. Everything's connected to everything. We're holding space for that reality. So we can sense, even in our own body, where there are zones of convergence, fields of negotiation, where tensions in our body meet, where there's crossroads, and to even tune in and feel that like certain areas are maybe denser or softer, and they're almost like humming or buzzing with an organized confusion. And by understanding ourselves as a whole, for instance, that maybe like clinging our toes, go ahead and grip with your toes. So your whole foot starts to shrink, and notice how your head feels. Notice how your neck feels. That just by relaxing your toes and really settling into the floor, you can feel how things happen geographically at a distance, because you're a whole being. That's the magic of who we are. So our whole map starts to change. And it's interesting to really explore how our psychology and our emotions play a part in our own holding patterns and our cognitive difficulties. So Stephen Porges, with his polyvagal theory, he says that our fascia, which is everything that you are, it's just like, it's called the mesenchyme, and it's like this lace-like matrix in which certain cells will deposit, and this kind of cell deposit, and it becomes a neuron, and it becomes a nerve cell, and it requires that fascial mesenchyme or tube, or a liver cell deposit, or a brain cell. It's like the stuff in which it's all happening. And our fascia listens more to the autonomic nervous system. So that's like your breathing, your heart, all the things that your body does without you thinking to sustain itself, more than it listens to technique. It's the response in your own system. So if we can create safety for another person, that self-organizing principle will reveal. If we're there trying to make a change or trying to fix somebody, they will brace themselves, and there'll be a closed system. So every interaction, every communication begins with that sense of like our own polyvagal tone, how we create and hold sacred space. A beautiful sutra. I started with like one page, and then I was like, oh my God, I have 20. I'm going to get through all. There was so much there. So listening to how our body speaks, listening to nada, listening to nature, listening to the space that holds all of, all the bubbles, the chirps, the burps, the all the releases, whatever it is, we're obtaining this divine hearing. So akasha, means completely, and kasha means radiating, shining. And it's said to manifest in sahasraram, the cerebrum, in the form of divine music. It will often start as a ringing sound, and then it gradually increases in volume and tone, and then it occupies the space in our central nervous system, or sushumna, the midline. We might perceive it as a vibrating ocean of ether and a field of resonance. Our heart, which comes out of that sushumna nadi, it's just folding in and out of itself, actually is the resonator of anahata, the heart chakra, right? And anahata means the unstruck sound, the sound that doesn't need an instrument. And this is the spirit of Shruti, which is the divine transmission that then gets translated into human speak, and Veda, penetrating knowledge, truth that rings, that removes all that is unsound. And that is a personal manifestation of Brahman, the creator. So we are coherent. We are a continuity. We are omnidirectional, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. Om. So listening, not just hearing. And it's described that when this nada awakens, we might hear buzzing, the sound of lutes playing, of bells, of waves rumbling. I bet you do, Christina, living close to the ocean, right? It's like you can hear it at night. Isn't it beautiful? It's like, and it's a hum, right? Waterfalls, rainfall. Isn't it wonderful going to bed and it's raining? Thunderclouds rumbling, birds chirping, stringed and percussive instruments, conch shells blowing, horns, and bees. So again, your ear shaped like a conch shell, like a shankar. And Patanjali, in his iconography, he holds the conch actually in his left hand. Interesting. And it's the call of wisdom. It is also relates to the temporal bones. So remember, all the other bones of the skull are sutured. So it's like a tongue and groove. But the temporal bones are baffled. Okay. So every time you breathe, if you want to just touch above your ear, kind of above the temple of your glasses, probably, you're going to feel this ridge, right? Can you feel how it's shaped like this? And just like and it's kind of like a baby's grasp, right? You know how a baby has a firm grasp, but they're not gripping. So it's like they're able to hold with their skin and just hold those bones. And then maybe even put your thumb on the mastoid process, that little cone-shaped bone at the back of your ear. Oh, yeah. And can you feel how your hearing's amplified? Even just, so if you cup your hands like this, Allison, a little more, so your fingers are along that little arc, and then let your jaw go. And everybody just, start speaking and just notice the resonance of your voice and how you're talking. With my opera teacher, we used to do this when we were singing. Sometimes we'd sing like this so we could hear ourselves better. Definitely, it helps us hear others better. So we start to listen to the sounds of our own body and of our own resonance field. Some say that the first phase of developing this extraordinary capacity for listening pierces through Brahma Granthi, which is that knot that most people feel something around their tailbone, their sacrum, their lumbars. The Granthi is a knot that no amount of stretching. Really? I was like, why didn't somebody tell me this? But it actually requires a shift in your psychology, a shift in your perception. And it is said to be released by pranayama. Again, like, can you feel space in your system? So as that Brahma Granthi opens, it is said that we'll hear tinkling sounds, will and that the body emits a sweet odor. The second phase, Vishnu Granthi, which is somewhere like around T9, it's somewhere like between your shoulder blades, it's that sticky spot, will begin to open and we'll feel a sense of lightness. It's kind of like a lot of people have clipped wings or their shoulder blades are adhered to their back. So when we can feel space in our shoulder girdle, we have a sense of feeling light instead of having to, for instance, get up by pressing down into the floor. We might feel our elbow points as moving forward and our shoulder blades like wings coming off of our back. Try that. So first just stand up where you have to press down to come up. And then feel this sense of your shoulder blades coming off your back and your elbows swinging forward. And it's like you just fly up. And then you can even do it in reverse. Now go back to your old way of getting up, which is like a down action. Do you feel how much heavier and harder it is? Right? Because it gets stuck in the shoulder girdle, in the pelvic girdle. But when you free the shoulder girdle, the pelvic girdle also starts to loosen up. And by the way, our next sutra is about flying, I think. So then the third phase, we open Rudra Granthi, which is like that knot somewhere at the base of the skull or the neck or somewhere deep in the head. And when we can, again, feel that sense of like your midline as being the atlanto-occipital outlet right here. So this is where your spinal cord emerges. This is where the first cervical vertebra is, which doesn't have the sticky outy parts the other vertebra do, the transverse processes. When you feel that as your midline, somewhere like here, there's actually, it's kind of hard to see on this, but there's these little facet joints that are kind of shaped almost like a little shell. And they're called the foot of the skull. So just like your pelvis has a foot, your head has a foot. And we can let the head rest more gently there. And we'll find that we have yes, we have no, we have possible, but we have all kinds of movements that can arise. So just that shift of proprioception. Nadam is described like a hunter that kills the animalistic tendencies of the mind. That you learn to dance with sound currents, and that your mind loses wandering tendencies because you're just delighting in the spaciousness of Akasha. All right, where do I want to go from here? Okay. So something I thought maybe I would talk about, but I think maybe I'll leave it behind, is that from this, it is said that Tasya Saptadaha Pranti Bhumi Prajna awakens. That was in the sadhana pada, the 7 realizations awaken from learning to listen or to feel into spaciousness. Maybe we'll have time to go over those again. But when we open space or ether, it's beyond space. It's like the etheric. We enter Turiya, which is the 4th dimension. We move beyond geography, time, and even causality. So sound meditation is said to be one of the best ways to bring us out of restlessness. And what is restlessness? I'm out of time. I should be somewhere else. Something else is more interesting, or I'm feeling external or internal pressures. So we're developing our capacity for super physical hearing to feel how spaces can open, new dimensions can be accessed, spaces that are even beyond the range of our physical ear. So, of course, to do this, we're going to have to learn how to navigate the noise inside of us, the noise that interferes, not the burps, the bubbles, the the movement of energy through us, but our own psyche, the chatter. It's not about suppressing our emotions, but as things come up, you have that choice. Like, I don't need that anymore. I don't need that thought. I can release that. It's a catharsis. So communication is how we share our prana, how we actually exchange the air that we breathe. You know, what are we sharing? What is vitalizing to us? And space is the distance between things that connects. It's the place in which things can enter, in which they can be held, and they can also exit. So, what is that void that we experience when we realize that something we thought was there was never there? How we fill space with our own ideas and our own expectations. Our power of hearing has miraculous potentiality. The power of sound itself is unobstructable, and sound can be felt. Here, the local boys like to jack up their Toyota trucks and have these huge speakers, and it's like you can hear them coming down the highway, like everything shakes. Literally, the house shakes, right? I mean, but it doesn't have to be that loud. All sound is actually felt. It can even be seen sometimes. It's something that touches us. It also produces heat and electricity. Speech vibrates our throat. So speech and space both operate from Vishuddha chakra, the center of purification. And it's a transference of energy that occurs through the muscle of our tongue. So your tongue has 8 sets of paired muscles. There's 16 total. I think we maybe explored this before, but we can do it again. So there's the superficial muscles of your mouth, which control your tongue movements outside of your mouth. So you can stick your tongue out and down and up, high, okay. And then there's the intrinsic muscles, which help you to curl your tongue, to widen it, to thin it. And the front 2/3 of the tongue are for eating and for speaking, and they're innervated by your brain. And the back third of your tongue is for speaking and for breathing, and it's innervated by your vagus nerve. Isn't that interesting? Which goes right behind the mastoid process and all the way down to your pelvic floor. So we need space in our voice box. It's really funny, like a little pet peeve. Voice makes a big difference to me, actually. Uh, like certain people, like I don't think I could live in an intimate relationship with them if they always talk like this. And it's kind of interesting because Nico's voice is changing. He's doing a really good job with the voice change. but he's really like this. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, here's the and I mean, his voice box is changing, so he's kind of like, so anyway, the tonality of voice, and we need space in our voice box to be able to speak. So that's something, you learn in singing. They're speaking in the head voice, like Mr. Bill Show. Oh no. They're speaking in the throat. They're speaking from the heart. They're speaking from the gut, and they're speaking from the pelvic floor. And that, we can have a shrill voice. We can actually learn how to navigate our voice through all these resonating chambers. I mean, we used to say, can you put your fingers on your mask and feel the resonance here? And you can use different parts of your voice, but we need that space. So I just had a conversation. My son, one of his friends, his father creates soundtracks for video games. And I was like, that's interesting. And so I went into his sound music studio, and I was like, oh, can I hear the speakers and whatnot? And he was like, yeah. So I sat down and was listening, and he was showing me something that he was working on. And it was actually really layered, and really, he does like Call of Duty. I'm not really into those games, or for Nico, there's a lot of shooting, but they actually have these incredible orchestral sequences within it. And he was and then there was the voice of a woman singing, and I said, oh, is that synth? And he goes, no, that's a real woman. And he said, we've recorded, so they've recorded in Vienna with the Philharmonic, with the London Philharmonic. It's astounding. I mean, these are real orchestras. It's like the best part of the war games, honestly. But then he was telling me, which is something I knew a little bit about, but now I know a little more, is a big challenge in the sound engineering is that all of us hear sound differently. So before, when people's technology was lower, they kind of had a baseline in the mix. But now, there's such high quality stereophonics, even with headphones, that they've had to map it differently. And there's even an app now, there's a program in which you take a photograph of your ear from different angles and the shape, and then it will change the EQ of the sound so that you hear it in a way which is more satisfying and rich to you. Isn't that interesting? So the shape of our ear really makes a difference. Pretty fascinating. So how we even hold our head, hold our face, the space that we have in our throat, the space that we feel in our cranium, changes the way that we hear conversations. And the sutra says, opening up these spaces, particularly that point behind the ear, helps you to hear the conversations of enlightened ones. That we are able to receive messages both in the waking state as well as in dreams, whether they are spoken or whispered. And so conventional hearing vibrates in the pocket of the ear. So when we start to feel space as bigger, we actually hear beyond what that just can fit into the pocket of our ear. Another really interesting thing. So in the immersion that I was holding, there was a woman. She had no idea what she was getting into, but anyway, she came. And by the end, she got it. Like in the beginning, it's really hard because I'm not teaching conventional yoga anymore. I'm over it. Okay. I'm like over making shapes. It's like feeling your wholeness, the continuity that you are, and exploring, reframing perception rather than just reshaping your body. It's a very different, but it's pretty profound. It takes a minute because there's an expectation. And she could not get beyond the ujjayi breathing. And I know for me, that was really hard because I practiced it and I developed it. And it was like a sound practice. And yes, it taught me to connect to my breath, but actually, it creates limitations because what do we have to do? You have to tighten the voice box. You have to contract the channel for the polyvagal passage. And then when you do it, can you see how this pit of the throat tightens? So Kanta Kupe, we had a sutra on that. Then what happens is it also creates a holding pattern in the costal arch, and the diaphragm gets locked, as does the pelvic floor. And then the spine can't move in response to the breath. And so when you inhale, because there's this holding pattern, your lumbar spine will only be able to move back. And this is called paradoxical breathing, which is associated with traumatic experiences. It's how I practiced yoga for decades. And it's so interesting as I put my hands on people's bodies, yogis develop all kinds of weird tissue buildup right above their pubic bone and in their costal arch. So there's a lot of unlearning and unwinding to do. And I was just very gently trying to encourage her to let the ujjayi go. Let it go. See what happens. And finally, she got it. It's a hard thing, right? So just noticing, what's happening with the space within us. Okay, I'll have, there'll be some more on that in the home play on the page. So when people don't want to hear something, what do they often do? They pull the jaw back. So just feel what happens when you do that. Feel how the mastoid tightens, how it tightens this whole sternocleidomastoid muscles here, and how there's a bracing of your jaw. Let that go now. Okay. So when our body does that, it's like our whole auditory system says, I'm going to listen, but I'm not going to take it in. And it's not just a metaphor. It's actually a strategy that our body does. And maybe it's because something doesn't feel safe. Somebody's imposing an agenda. So being able to really feel that space behind the mastoid, to imagine the backs of your ears gently widening and softening, and notice how your face relaxes, how your thoughts slow down, and the sense of inner space increases. This opens that psychological layer where we're no longer just listening through the filters of our memory, of our trauma, preference, or bias. Okay. So I know we got to wrap here, but this sutra actually touches upon, and Shanae, I was like, oh, your questions for the next podcast. This was so cool. Where memory is a thread in time and space, and that it pierces through segments of current experience that then links them into a continuity. And they are held by little knots like the beads on a mala. And death is the breaking of those knots. It's the ability, Pandit Rajmani talks about this, Tiguna. It's your ability to stay close to the threads that you want to have the continuity. What stories, what is the thread of continuity? And so at the time of death, it's said that it's very difficult to be able to choose which memories you want to keep at your forefront and which ones you want to drop. So the yogi learns to step into this spaciousness, which doesn't rely on time and space, and to organize their experiences and their memories. And they do this is way out there. They do this by the awareness of the relationship between hearing and space. Hearing is linked to the part of our brain that interprets sound and also learning through word. Word and meaning go hand in hand. Without meaning, words are only sound. So the space adjacent to the ears is independent of the space in our brain. And space has the capacity to store sound, preserve words and their deeper meaning. So at the point of death, we're given this possibility of focusing on this minuscule area behind the ear to let go of the unwanted memories, which would then inform our next incarnation, and to deposit the wisdom into our chitta samvit, which is like our capacity for wisdom that we can take with us from incarnation to incarnation. So, wow, that's pretty potent. So divine hearing, let's wrap, is ultimately the expansion of our consciousness into receptivity, our ability to choose the narratives that we carry, and to refine ourselves to become an instrument of wisdom, to realize that we are not merely hearing sound, we are hearing the space that life requires. Okay. So I'll go to our share screen for the questions. It seems to work well. How much space do you need to collect your thoughts? How do you respond when someone has a quick retort or fix? Do you have a quick ear or are you hard of hearing? How might you improve your ability to hear? Focus on relationship between your ear and space. I'm definitely going to try that. Offering more attention to someone who's speaking, inner listening exercises, or chanting. How does hearing relate to age and family surroundings? Did you ever learn that something wasn't true that you held space for and structured your life around? Have you ever heard something that changed your life? Okay, I will put the. All right. We had some pretty interesting conversations. And something that kind of came up for me, we were talking about, like, you know, when somebody has a quick fix or a quick retort, how we respond. And we kind of all were like, it doesn't always work for us. And then where sometimes people will have a quick comeback, and the sense of the forked tongue, where you're like, what did they really mean by that? And how then it might take you a while to process, and then that event has passed, and then you finally sort things out. It takes you time to sort things out. And then the question of, has too much time passed? Do you just let it go? when do you speak up for that? So we spoke about that, and that like something that I learned from my husband that's proven very helpful for me, because when I'll just be like, what do they mean by that? To actually say that, well, what do you mean by that? When somebody says something that like, are they masking something? Are they saying something, but they mean something else? And it's um, like people can hide criticism and compliments, or it's like people like the forked tongue thing. So just being really clear as far as what do you mean by that? And then Tannen, you had a phrase. You want to share the phrase? So I wrote it down.
It's so one of the ways I'll get stuck is because I live in a pretty red town. So if someone says something politically shocking to me that I think is like morally shocking, not just policy, um, you can say, what is it about me that makes you think it's okay to say that to me? Because yeah, I just I hope that if I get to use that is as effective as it sounds, but I like the idea of it.
She's got it in her breast pocket. And then you were saying about like, you have that. So when you need to shore yourself up, and we talked about how sometimes like, yeah, you have to like hold a space for yourself because people can say all kinds of things and skirt around things versus like having an honest conversation.
And while like I don't want to be confrontational with people, I have learned that when people go on and on and on about their what I consider horrific ideology, just against the concept that everybody is a human being, that if I don't feel comfortable enough to engage and disagree with them, at the very least, I don't need to sit there and listen to it. And
Mm.
whether it's a matter of getting up and walking away, that does that in my gut, if we're hearing and listening to our gut, that to me is not enough. So having something like that to be like, hey, have I sent a signal to you that makes you think that I align with your ideology? Because if that is the case, that is not who I am, and you don't know who I am. And so that phrase for me, when I heard that, I thought, oh, that encapsulates how I have felt in those moments and what I would have liked to convey. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I don't ever want anyone to think that I think that it's okay to drag people off of the street, or that you can be okay with that, but I don't want you to think that that's who I am. And to me, that's what that phrase is. It just kind of like puts the ball back in their court without
Right.
me agreeing and making it would feel like I was actually sticking up for myself and saying something without getting into it.
I think that it would be interesting too if after you say that, Tannen, um, or in having conversations with folks, if if anyone is able to specifically say why they felt like it was a space where they could air these opinions. Like it could be a positive thing where the person might say, well, I assume or I know that we're on different spectrums here with our opinions, but I feel safe sharing my view with you. Like I don't feel like you're going to attack me for sharing that, which could be a positive interaction. Or other people may just kind of shut it down right there and just say, okay, got it. You know, you don't want to talk about it. It invites kind of a diversity of reactions, I think, which is nice.
Now the ghetto part of me is kicking in, which is like, depending on a circumstance, it could invite a lot of other things. You know what I mean? So yeah, knowing when to use it. And then also, like you were saying, like knowing when to get up and leave and unplug something and be like, okay, well, I think I've heard enough. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Talia. I'm just flashing on you and the amazing vehicle that you created with Surfers for Strays, and then how then it became more complex and bigger and different kinds of conversations. And
I was talking with Allison because she's on a board I didn't quite get what it was for, education.
It's for professional translators. So it's my professional organization for translators in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty special and pretty interesting. But she brought up something about her board of directors, and our board of directors has struggled a lot in the last years. We formed, and anyway, I just today after this class, actually this evening, I'm forming what I call a Royal Alaya board. It's like the AK executive committee, with the big kahunas. And so I'm structuring the organization in a surf theme. And so the longboarding committee is the board of directors. But the Royal Alaya, the Alayas were the wooden surfboards that the surfers used, the original, surfers, the Hawaiians. But the big kahunas and how they would conflict resolve with the ho'oponopono. I never say that word right.
Ho'o.
Ho'o.
Pono.
Pono. Yeah.
Pono.
Ho'oponopono. Yeah.
Ho'o means to make, and pono means balance and right and just and fair. Yeah. Ho'o, pono, pono. Now you got it.
Ho'o, pono. Thank you. But so I'm gathering like people in my tribe, in my pack, that can hold space to be able to conflict resolve in a similar manner as the ho'oponopono. The ability to forgive and to not blame and shame or problem obsess, because I felt like we went through this period of with a lot of struggle with right and wrong and good and bad, and then like a lot of energy being blocked with like people not talking to each other, and it like just all the flows of communication, just traffic jams. And so I'm hoping that this committee and this board can really feel into sacred communication. And I talked with Allison about that, how kahea in the course I've taken 16 weeks of the course now, to be able to actively listen, and what is empathy. And then so from that guidance, and then the Hawaiian influence, to go forward with people around me that can carry this ability to actively listen, and then reflect, and then go forward, or sometimes go backwards, or go, Bhavani, in your teachings, I'm just like, we were literally an octopus in my class on Friday, and it was so fun. We were like laughing and like just jiggling and wiggling out of our old patterns. And then I just taught like at a really nice place to 9 men on a leadership retreat, and we were babies. We were embryos, then we were babies. and I'm like just getting freed up of how things have to look, and it's been so freeing. So I wanted to just report back that my classes have been so, like, I look at everybody when they stand up out of Shavasana and they're completely different people. Yeah, completely.
It makes me feel into like Ashtanga yoga is a different feeling. Like it's like you're an octopus.
Oh my gosh, am I paddling and surfing? It's completely different as I ungird myself. It's so amazing.
Awesome. That's super exciting.
I told Talia, she was talking about some of the exercises you all were doing with the Bio Tensegrity course and channeling babies, toddlers, and that kind of, finding your balance. And I had this great mental image of a baby on a surfboard, just going like this, just bobbling along. And it makes sense because that's how you stay up. If you're
right.
If the baby's rigid, it's gonna
right. If you're just a bubble floating on an ocean of bubbles, it's probably a good place to begin, right?
Or a raspberry floating in Jello. Yeah. A raspberry floating in Jello.
Yeah. Cool.
It's all goo.
It's all goo.
And that's what I've been channeling that with because Talia and I were talking about this board business, and the board that I'm on over the last year or so, we've been going through the process of changing the name of the organization to encompass like a wider geographical area and a wider variety of membership. And thinking about, okay, how do we want the name to reflect that? And it's, for us as a board, it's felt very much like an opening, like, oh, there's all of these possibilities and we're excited. Well, and we knew we were having some communication issues, but like, if you've been on a board, there's only so much you can tell the general public or your membership when decisions are made. Like you can't say, oh, we're thinking about this and this and this before you take a vote on it and all of that. So anyway, when some of these changes were revealed, we had some members who were really upset about the change. And all of a sudden, it just felt like this shrinking. It was like, no, they didn't want change. They didn't want a name change. They didn't want the organization to be opened up to other types of language professionals. It was like, all of these little messages were coming in, and it was so interesting to see how we as board members reacted, like which of us were willing to sit with the discomfort of we're hearing these messages. We know it's uncomfortable. Let's talk about it. Here's an opportunity to connect and talk about why this might be difficult. And then some board members who just wanted to shut the whole thing down, not make any changes, like forget about it. This is too scary. So yeah, just it's been such good practice for me the last couple of weeks as all of this has been going on, to just say, you know what, I'm going to listen to what people have to say. It might be uncomfortable. Maybe some of these changes aren't going to be like what we thought they were going to look like. Maybe we need to be open to some of that. But again, like trying to have that kind of flexibility, trying to be open and ask questions versus like that rigidity that it's just so easy when you're being challenged to like want to stake your claim, like, nope, this is what we're doing. We're not going to listen to anybody.
Sometimes it's tiring.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's working good enough. Like, are we just going to unravel everything? I mean, we were talking about that, like in our room, about like, you know, an experience and a story, and you thought it was a certain way and your whole life was around it. And then you realize it wasn't. And sometimes it can be, especially with elders, right? I mean, it can just be, I've shared this. I just remember my mother saying, like, I'm an old woman. Don't try to change me. Just leave me alone. Like, because it's a lot to unwind things, and to listen to everybody's opinion. You know? I don't have a lot of bandwidth for that in organization kind of form. I love it in this kind of a situation, but otherwise it's like, because then it's like, how do you take that bigness and then try to formulate a new structure, you know, with policies in place? And like, I am not that person. So I like, I admire that in the two of you.
I think that this work, like with the physical body and mentally, I would not be able to happily go about this work if it wasn't for that. If that makes sense. Like something like this could have totally stressed me out. But because of this work that we're all doing, I'm able to be like, okay, let's see, let's see where this goes. I mean,
throw all the cards in the air and see where they land, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah. Anybody else want to pipe in, chirp in, toot their horn?
Well, I'll share one thing that Talia said that I liked was feel, hear, feel, see. I really liked that.
Yeah. We are doing all of that, right? Yeah. Well, mahalo. Enjoy the crisp weather wherever you are. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was fun. I enjoyed it. See you next week. Aloha.
Yeah.
Aloha.